Hello from wintry Santiago, Chile, and welcome to this episode of Crossing Borders with Nathan Lustig, where I interview entrepreneurs doing startups across borders and the people who support them, with a focus on companies that have some relationship to Latin America. My guest today is Rocio Fonseca, Executive Director of Startup Chile. Startup Chile is a Chilean government program that gives equity-free grants to startups to set up shop and build their businesses from Chile. We talk about Rocio's background in the hard sciences, her first startup after graduating from university, what it was like trying to start a tech business in Chile in the early 2000s, working with Fundación Chile, and why she decided to move to the US to study at MIT. We also get into her experience working and living in Silicon Valley and her decision to come back to Chile to become Startup Chile's executive director. We talk specifics about the different programs inside of Startup Chile, including S Factory, which is a pre-accelerator dedicated to increasing female-founded startups, what it's like being a woman in tech in Latin America, and where she sees the startup ecosystem going over the next 5 to 10 years. I really enjoyed getting to catch up with Rocio, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Thanks for being on the podcast. How's it going today?
Yeah, thanks for the invitation, Nathan.
No, happy to do it. So where are we in the world today?
Now we are in Santiago de Chile.
We are indeed, and this is one of the first podcasts in a while that we've been in the same location.
Yes, you're right.
So this is good. So what brought you to Santiago, Chile?
Well, I'm from here. I was made in Chile, born in Chile, and I have been living almost my entire life here. So it's an honor to be here and trying to be a game changer for innovation and entrepreneurship.
So what are you doing to be a game changer?
Well, I lead Startup Chile. I'm the executive director of that awesome program. And I arrived already to work here like 2 years ago or so. And before that, I was living in US for a while.
And what were you doing in the US before Startup Chile?
I used to work here in Chile, and I was very boring and I didn't know what to do. And what I was doing in US, I was studying there. When I was living here in Chile, I was super worried about my future and what to do. You know, in Latin America, you have some limitations. So it was like what to do next. And I'm married. So I told my husband, you know what? I really want to quit to my job and do something different. And I wanted to travel around the world. And my husband said like I was totally insane. And he proposed me to study. And that's how everything started. So we both applied to different universities and I started to study at MIT.
Nice. And so what were you working on in Chile before you left?
Well, I had 3 small businesses. I used to be an entrepreneur too. One was a technological-based startup. I had my own patent. And I was very happy with that. It was about water treatment. And after that, I started to work in Fundación Chile. I don't know if you know it.
Yep.
And I used to be the second on board in sustainability. So I was like an entrepreneur doing companies inside a large corporation worried about innovation and technology. And I stayed at Fundación Chile for like 8 years or so. It was a long
you were there
trip.
a long time.
Yeah, because you know what? It's R&D, like applied R&D, and sometimes you have to raise funds and do everything, but inside a corporation that can take a while. So yeah, I woke up one day and I said like, I have to stop and I have to change everything.
So my first experience in Chile, the second day in Chile was at Fundación Chile. They had a barbecue for all the Startup Chile people. And that's where I met all of the...
With the Startup Chile people?
Yeah.
I didn't know about it.
So this
Nobody
was
told me that.
2010. And so the guys from Arc Daily were there.
Wow.
The Groupon guys, Nico from Welco was there. And it was interesting because at that time of Startup Chile, it was only for foreigners. So it was kind of interesting where you had the local entrepreneurs saying, why are these guys getting money and that's not? Here? But after like the second or third piscola, it was okay.
It's fine. No, I didn't know about that.
So at Fundación Chile, you were there for a while. Did you see any of the success cases of companies that went through there? And
well, just a few maybe, because I started like a researcher. I studied biotechnology. So I was like creating technologies inside the lab and with mining companies. And Fundación Chile used to have this other business model that was like transfer technology. So it was quite different. They didn't have what is today innovation and entrepreneurship that is open and collaborative. So it was different.
And so when you went to the US, what did you study?
I did the Sloan Fellow program at MIT. So I got my Master in Science in Management.
So you have a hard sciences background.
Yes.
That's not so common for women,
No.
especially in Latin America. How did you get into it?
I think I'm 37, and I studied biotechnology in 2000 already. Wow. No, 1998. My gosh. And I always wanted to be something different. I'm not like a traditional female here in Chile. And I always had a passion in sustainability, and I wanted to save the planet and create technologies and whatever. So I didn't know what to study, and I started to do some research, and I couldn't find anything that was cool, that was, I don't know, that I was interested in. And one day I just saw the curriculum of this awesome career, and that's it. I didn't know. It was not inside my plans. I was just looking for something different. And in like 20 years ago already, nobody knew about tech entrepreneurs, innovation. Nobody was talking about biotech. And so when I graduated and I started to look for a job, nobody wanted to hire me because nobody knew what was it, right? So that's the reason why I started my own startup.
And what was the reaction like you talked a little bit about employers, but what was the reaction like of your friends or your family? Because like for me, when I first got here and I said, I'm an entrepreneur or I have my own business, they looked at you like you were basically homeless living in the street. It's changed now, but what was it like?
No, I think, it was a little bit different. When I started to study, nobody understood what I was studying really. Everybody was thinking some kind of weird and creepy lab person. And after that, once I graduated, it took me like 1 year, almost 2 years to take my thesis out. It was super complicated. And I did my thesis on what is today my patent. So it was some kind of mix within my thesis and the patent and the business. So I really believe that my family didn't realize that I was doing a business and I was raising funds and I was selling things. Mm-hmm. It was super funny. I think my family, they don't know that.
That's interesting. That's really funny. And so what was the business? What was the patent in?
Well, so we created with 2 colleagues, we created a technology that is a passive treatment technology to treat wastewater from wineries, for example, or small villages, right? So a lot of treatments are very intensive in energy and pumps, and everything was related with nature. That's biotechnology, right? So you can treat water without the use of energy and just using vegetables. And it was a nice design and we did everything.
And you said you raised some money or went out and tried to raise money. What was that experience like going back? That would have been 15-ish years ago.
It was almost impossible, right? So it was funny because we sold the treatment to people that was living outside of Santiago in their own houses. The systems are still working. I always ask for it. And we didn't sell it like an innovation. We just said this works. Don't worry, everything is going to be fine. And that's it. It was hard because sell something is not easy, right? But I think it worked well. And after that, I found a job at Fundación Chile, and I really wanted to go forward to work for them. And I started to work there.
So what did you learn from your startup experience that you use today when you talk to the entrepreneurs at Startup Chile?
Well, I think the hardest part of everything is, even when people laugh about it, is how to communicate your idea. I think some entrepreneurs, some startups, they don't realize that. And even if you are a genius, if you don't know how to communicate with others, it's going to be impossible to do whatever you want. So I always talk with them about simplicity in the message, and that's one of the hardest part. I think that can open door wherever you want, right? And after that, of course, is selling, doing your business model, raising funds or whatever. But I think the main issue is the starting point is how to communicate your idea, your business.
So would you say communication is the biggest thing that most early entrepreneurs end up getting wrong, or something else?
Well, I think there is a lot of things. One is the simplicity in the message. you have a lot of tech people that they don't know how to communicate. So you have to teach them how to do it. The second thing is they are very focused on the product and not the business. That's a huge mistake. Another thing that we're very worried now is accountability, accounting and financial issues and legal issues. They always outsource all those things. And I think it's a huge mistake. We have seen startups that fail for just financial issues, but it's because they don't know what is the financial structure of the company. That's a very silly mistake, because you're doing well, but you don't know how to manage your business. And
yeah, one of the other entrepreneurs on the podcast talked about how he had been in business for 6 years and had been, I think, selling millions of dollars by then, and almost went bankrupt because he wasn't managing the cash flow correctly.
Yeah.
And so, you're exactly right. You can't leave the understanding of the accounting and the legal structure to someone else. You need to really understand it. So when you were studying at MIT, did you know that you were going to come back to Chile, or were you planning on staying in the US?
I didn't know. I went just to see what happened, just to have an adventure there. And my husband was super nice in that sense. And we went together looking for a dream that we didn't know what was it. So I went once I was there, 3 months after I started the program, I knew that I did it for the Chilean scholarship, the Becas Chile. So that was the moment that I realized that I maybe had to come back. But no, I didn't know. I just knew that I wanted to do something different. And I wanted to, I don't know how to say it in English, but it's like, do you want to be the tail of the tiger or the head of the mouse? I don't know what is.
It's like in English, I think you'd say like a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah. So I realized that I really wanted to be here in Chile and do a change. It's awesome to be in US. You learn a lot, but you cannot make the difference there, or it's going to be almost impossible. And here, if you do your best, I really believe that you can be a game changer.
So how long did you stay in the US after
It was almost 2.5 years. So I studied the Sloan Fellow program is 1 year program. It's super intensive. It's the same hours as 2 years of an MBA. So it's insane.
Wow.
You have to study a lot. And after that, we moved to Palo Alto. My husband was studying there. It was his turn. Mm-hmm. And he was studying at Stanford. And I was, of course, enjoying Silicon Valley connections and everything. I didn't know nobody, and I just started to knock doors. And I finished working with UC Berkeley, the Center for Entrepreneurship there, with some angels, with some startups, just to understand everything. It was great.
What did you learn in the Valley that you think might have been useful when you were either working at Fundación Chile or working on your own company?
Well, I think one is to have a clear message, because people there, they don't have time. It's the completely different. I really miss that, because in Silicon Valley, everybody has just 15 minutes or maybe 20 if you're lucky. And I really love that. At the beginning was like, what? But that teach you how to do things like in a very simple way, and communicate and say like, what do you want and what can you give back, So I really, really love that. And once I arrived here to the old method, it was like, no, or like 1 hour's meeting without any sense and everything. It was like, yeah, I love that. And I always trying to push that in our meetings in Startup Chile. And it's quite difficult, but I try to do my best to give that. And everything that is in terms of diversity here in Chile, that's the reason why I moved, one of the reasons, because here in Chile, everybody used to look the same. Now it's different. So when you come from a family that come from a very common family here. So if you want to do something else in your life, you are going to be blocked by people that said to you that you didn't study in the right school, or you don't have the right, this, right? And you don't have the correct last name. So it's like, I don't like that. And was one of the reasons why I moved out.
Well, I think actually that's one of our biggest competitive advantages at Magma, because we just don't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm not from here, and obviously there's different prejudices from every country, but
sure.
I don't have the ones here. So it's like very easy for us to cut through a lot of that. And my two partners who are Chilean don't care either. So for us, I've always seen it as a very good business opportunity because we can get really, really good people that aren't getting other opportunities.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting, especially when you said everyone sort of looked the same in Chile before and it's changed now. When I was first here, I didn't see
too many foreigners, black people,
well,
or different religions,
I didn't see a single black person until my 5th month in Chile. And now there's been lots of immigration.
Yeah.
And there's a stat that I saw from 2008 or 2009, just before I got to Chile, that said that I believe it was 95 or 97% of Chileans had never met a foreigner that wasn't Argentine, Bolivian, or Peruvian.
Maybe Brazilian.
Maybe. But so I was one of the first foreigners that weren't the neighbors that I met. A lot of people, not obviously the people that are more well off or had traveled, but the rest of the country. And Chile has completely changed in the last
less than 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, even you see it in 3 years with immigration from US, Europe, Venezuela, Colombia, Peru. Yeah. It's really amazing to see. Going into the immigration piece, Startup Chile has had a big impact on that. And
you like it or not?
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I mean, beyond Startup Chile bringing a lot of foreign people who have started to see the ecosystem, there's the new tech visa that Chile just got. Can you talk a little bit about Startup Chile's impact on bringing people from abroad and then the new visa?
Yeah, well, you know that we started attracting people from everywhere. And now almost the 30% of each generation is Chilean. We don't have quotas, so we're very happy with that result. And with the growth of technology and startups here in Chile, a lot of large corporations like Amazon, for example, or other companies that are working in tech, the Chilean government started to ask about how to bring talent, because one of the issues is not that we don't have talent here in Chile. We have, and a lot, but just by volume is not enough to the amount of technology companies that are growing here, right? Or are settling here. So we use with Invest Chile, with all the ministry that were needed, with PDI and group of tech Chilean startups, we started to create this protocol for the Visa Tech. And the mainly idea is the protocol that we have in Startup Chile to bring foreigners to our country. The protocol was extended to other corporations, right? So Invest Chile, for example, if you are coming to Chile through a company that Invest Chile is helping, you can use Visa Tech. If you are part of the association of the Chilean technologies that are inside the Visa Tech, you can bring people from there. So we just did this because we really believe that Chile has the potential of create a tech ecosystem in Latin America, and we need the volume to do that. And today we don't have it. We have a gap of 5,000 employees, tech employees per year, and the universities are just creating 1,000. So even if the educational system change, is not going to change in the short term. So you have to change it now. And this is a measure that we create to help tech companies right now.
Yeah, we've been really interested to see how that's going to work, because I think we have about 300 and something employees between all of our companies around the world. I think maybe 100 something are in Chile. And I think probably at least a third to half are from abroad. Many of them are from Latin America as well, from Argentina, from Venezuela, from Colombia. And for us, we love it. I mean, we love bringing people in. And especially with economies that maybe aren't doing so well in Latin America, it's a very easy sell. So, if anyone is abroad and wants to come work for Magma companies, please come.
And it's great, because when other countries are closing their barriers, Chile is opening, and we're taking advantage of the human capital that exists in other places, and we wanted to attract them and come here to Chile. So we're, of course, is in every country you have immigration issues, people that is pro-immigration and people that hate that. I'm super pro-immigration. And it's advanced human capital too, right? So I really believe diversity can add value to our economy.
Yeah, and I think it's clear that it has. So tell me a little bit about Startup Chile and the 3 different funding lines that you have now. So I had Nico Shea on the podcast talking about the early beginnings.
Yeah.
I had Seba Vidal talking about sort of the middle.
Yeah.
And now we've got the new stuff.
Yeah.
So what are the three lines and who are they for?
Yeah, I think the main difference within the beginning of Startup Chile and now is the profile of our entrepreneurs. So as you said at the beginning was, and you were part of it, right? And we really appreciate it, is that the profile that the original entrepreneurs here was more like an advocate for innovation and entrepreneurship and to help us to spread the word, to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And that was great because we really needed that snowball, right? Because it didn't exist. And today, the startup that we're looking for are startups that they want to do their business here and they want to settle here in Chile, or a startup that can really add value to our economy based on technology innovation. So now we have two funds. It's just the Startup Factory Fund and the Seed Fund. Startup Factory is a female pre-acceleration program. So we attract founders from everywhere that are female founders and they want to come to Chile. And that's a very early stage. They are in the stage of prototyping. And after 4 months, they are done with their MVP. The exceptions are biotech companies and healthcare startups. And we give them 10 million pesos. That is around $15,000. And after that, the best ones, they have a small follow-on fund that is $10,000. And Seed, it used to be the original fund of Startup Chile. And now we just accept startups that already have their MVP. They used to accept ideas and wherever. Now it's just starting from MVPs. And after those 6 months of acceleration program, you have your product done. And we give them 30K. And the new generation, we have an application process that is open now. The best ones, we're going to double the amount of money that was invested. So it's going to be 40 million pesos.
Very nice. And so who do you think most benefits from applying for either the S Factory female accelerator or the seed stage one? What kind of companies or types of people, the stage?
I think it depends on the stage. The Startup Factory was created to empower females in technology. So the focus there is quite different to the second one, the seed. And here you can see how, and in the Startup Factory program, you can see how can you create a strong community. And even when we are looking for potential businesses, the focus there is to empower women. So the focus in that program is more about coaching, mentoring, and I believe it's a brainwash program just to empower female founders. So the focus is quite different. And the second one, the seed program, we are looking to diversify the economic matrix. You know that we cannot live from mining companies or agriculture in the future, right? So now we're looking for a startup that can help us to diversify the economic matrix, or they can add value to the traditional companies, adding technology in the processes or everything. So.
And why do you think that starting the S Factory to empower women is so important for Latin America, especially?
Well, you can change an entire country economy empowering women. It doesn't matter if you are like pro-male, wherever, macho things, if you just think in white and black, you can duplicate an economy if you create all the ecosystem to empowering women in maybe go and work for corporations or create their own startups. But there is a lot of studies, World Bank, that they really show the economical impact of putting women inside or working for our economy. So that's the reason why we're empowering women. And I believe when you show them that a lot of different cultures in different countries, women, they have the same problem. That is a cultural problem. So to create this community is very strong in terms of changing mindsets and changing the culture.
And how many rounds of S Factory have been so far?
Per program, we have 2 rounds. So 2 of TSF and 2 seeds program.
And how does it feel now that you've got your first rounds of S Factory with women coming out of it?
We're already in generation 5 and generation 6 is arriving next month. It's insane. And you can realize that they completely change. It's a weird We were focused just in empowering women in tech, but we didn't know that what will be the outcome of the program, really. We entered it with one hypothesis and we went out with completely different results. It is great.
What would you say is the most interesting or impressive sort of change from someone who started in the program and then came out the other side?
Well, I think one of our favorite ones is a lady who created a toothbrush. I don't know if you know her.
I don't.
She started with Girls in Tech. And she had just the idea and some prototype. And after the months of the program, she didn't know how to speak English either, right? And she was super worried about cultural issues. And she learned how to speak English. But she's in US now trying to raise funds. So, and now when I talk to her, she looks back and said, like, you really changed my mind. And she's from Chile and she won Generation 3, I think. So you have very good examples in a very short term that are completely different. Maybe the startup is going to fail, but you know that you change a person's mindset.
Oh, that's awesome. Why do you think that? So from our perspective in our applications, we've gotten, 750 to 1,000 applications per year to Magma, all from around LATAM, but very, very, very few are women. Like the story you told, they never applied. Yeah. And it fits with our model of going to the US. Why do you think women aren't applying as much to Magma? Are we doing something wrong?
No,
should we be reaching out more? Is it a cultural thing? That's the reason
why we're trying to change things. Because as a women, we have serious problems believing in ourselves. It's examples. When you do some research, for example, if a man is going to apply for a job, if men do the checklist, they apply with just the 50% of them done. Women, we have to do checklisting 100% to think in applying to that job. So it's just about believing yourself, I think. Again, it doesn't matter where you come from. I really believe everything happens inside your home and you have your own culture. So it's the female problem is worldwide. We don't see geographical barrier with that.
So what are the top couple advice that you give to female entrepreneurs that you meet or that are going through the program to get them to sort of break out of the mindset that you want them to break into?
Well, believe in yourself. It's super easy. It looks like something weird, like psychology or something. But I think it's believe in yourself, trust in yourself. And I always said that you're going to fail. Yes, I guarantee you that you're going to fail, but you have to move forward and do it faster than others. That's it. But I believe to change the mind, it's the most hard part. So that's the reason why we cross cultures, to see that it doesn't matter where do you come from. You have the same issues. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of same issues across cultures, so the US has had a lot of bad things that have come out recently between companies like Uber and venture capitalists that have been behaving poorly. From your experience as a female founder, then going to the US, then coming here, what have you seen in terms of culture in Latin America in comparison to the US? Is Latin America doing better and not falling into what the US has kind of fallen into? Or
in terms of what? Of female empowering and equality?
With the last 2 or 3 months, you've had Uber, where the CEO got fired and they had a bad culture where it was very sexist. And then you had a lot of the VCs that had been, doing everything from being creepy with women and sending photos and whatever. Have you seen similar issues in Latin America
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing?
Maybe you don't even have venture capital in Latin America, right? How are we going to complain about VCs if we don't have them, right? But you can, when you see women inside corporations for sale their products or talking with the few VCs that you have here or angels, it is different, right? If you're too passionate, it's like, oh, this lady is complicated. Or if you are too quiet, maybe she's going to start to cry. So it's like, it's different. Yeah, but again, I think we don't have the amount of startups to create some kind of statistics or something. But yeah, we don't have even venture capital. Come on. We have to start to create those things first. And after that, we can compare.
No, it's interesting to just sort of see. So what have been some of the biggest lessons you've learned? Now you've seen how many generations of seed?
18.
Yeah. So from going back and seeing what others have done.
One.
I was zero.
Zero.
I was the real one.
You were
and
the pilot project.
Yeah, and then they eliminated. They said, no, you're no longer one anymore. You're just the hidden ones. So what have you taken from one, seeing what has happened in the program? It's how many startups have been through Startup Chile now?
More than 1,500.
Yeah, so that's a huge sample size between the data and then the ones that you've seen in person.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest things you've learned, either about looking at who's going to be successful, who's not going to be successful, types of companies that you think are successful for Latin America, anything that you've learned?
I think the best entrepreneurs, I think startups, you can make it as an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if your startup fail, you're going to change that and you're going to learn a lot. So for me to be persistent and to continue believing in yourself and create a model where you can make money of it, it would be perfect. So you can realize who is going to do it because they're persistent about going through the things that they really believe. It doesn't matter the product. Sometimes you show me the pitch and the product and it's, for me, not sexy at all. But the guy after said like, I did like $1 million and you start like, what? Seriously? No, I don't know. For me, it's everything about the person and the team who is in charge of everything. And in terms of who is doing well and what kind of startups are popping up here very well, I believe because we don't have venture capital in Latin America, I never know that if it's a good thing or a bad thing, because what I don't like about Silicon Valley is that everybody is looking for raising funds with VCs. And after 5 years, you have to go to an IPO or to do an M&A, right? That's the only business model that you have there. But here, due to the lack of VCs, you created something that I really like. That is, you have to create your own cash flow and you have to survive from day one because you don't know. You know that you don't have venture capital money. So I really like that. So I never know if it's good or bad because it's tricky because I'm trying to promote VCs here. And what companies we're looking that are very good are the ones that are looking good in terms of amounts of sales, are the ones that are selling IoT products to large corporations, mining companies, agriculture. But they are doing like very good models in terms of, it doesn't matter the industry, because if you're looking for transportation efficiency or energy efficiency or whatever, it doesn't matter the industry where what you are selling, right? It's the same product. So we have very successful startups that are like transversal to like mining companies, agriculture, and you are just helping traditional companies to go through technology to improve their efficiency. So they are doing very well, and they are not going to appear in the news because they are not sexy at all, but they are doing great.
Those are the startups we love. Yeah. The ones that aren't the rock stars. Yeah. They're doing great.
Yeah.
And I think to your point about venture capital, I think it is a huge advantage that there's not the excess of money like there is in Silicon Valley, because once you do find someone who is able to get through maybe their first 100,000 in sales or 50,000 in sales, and they've paid for their company for a half a year or a year, and then you do give them some venture capital, then they go crazy and they can grow really, really fast. Yeah. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see over the next, I don't know, whenever this current wave of lots of capital into startups in the US slows down, and it will slow down at some point, whether companies that either were bootstrapping in the US or just receive small amounts of money versus companies that are in LATAM that have done well will start to do even better.
I'm very positive with the second one.
I think it will too. Yeah. I mean, we've seen, I forget which entrepreneur on the podcast said that being in Argentina especially, but in Latin America in general, is like, and trying to start a business is like trying to run with mud up to your knees. And so, and
in Venezuela, it's happening the same, right?
Yeah, it's way worse. I mean, up there, it's probably to your chest.
Yeah.
But when you get them out of the mud and they've already been successful, they now run like crazy.
Yeah.
And so that's what I tell.
And they can do the same with the half amount of money that you can do in Silicon Valley or in US, right? If you give $1 million in US is nothing versus 500K maybe here. You're going to do the double. Or
from our startups internally, it's like 90%, not 50. So one of our companies that raised money in the US we were in an investor meeting in California, and they asked us, what's your burn rate? And I responded and said it's 150,000. And they said, well, okay, so you must have like good sales or you must have a big investment. And I was like, no, that's for the year. And they couldn't believe it. They actually didn't believe it. They said, you must be lying, basically said, you must be lying, and ended the meeting very quickly thereafter because we had a real product. We had sales. We had like 8 people. And how do you do 8 people in a year for $150,000? Like, they didn't understand. And we have one of our other companies that's now, I think, close to 20 people, with some in the US and some in Latin America. And they only spend on everything like $50-something thousand per month, which is like, could be 4 people in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And so the money goes just way, way farther.
Yeah.
So
welcome investors to Latin America.
So speaking of the investors coming to Latin America, beyond the cost savings, why do you think U.S. investors should be looking at Latin America? What advice would you give to U.S. investors for looking at Latin America?
I think one of the main assets that startups in Latin America we have is that we solve real problems, right? Like global real problems, like water scarcity, energy issues, transportation, smart cities. We're not thinking in create the flying car. We're thinking in how to solve water scarcity. So a lot of people loves to dream. That's completely fine. It's not wrong at all. But I think for us in Latin America, that's awesome because you're really going to need to solve those problems. Maybe not tomorrow, but in a near future. And because we live the reality here, they are going to solve those problems. So I always tell VCs, and I look their portfolio and it's like, yeah, what real problem are you solving? And here in Latin America, you have tons of those startups. So if I was a VC, I will start looking in Latin America and how to solve problems because they are global problems. Everybody's looking for B2C business models. And of course, you have the advantage in US that you are like 270 something million. And here you're just in Chile, 16 million. That's almost zero. It's smaller than New York, right?
Yeah.
So
the other important thing on that is that the GDP of Chile is the same as GDP of Wisconsin, where I'm from, which is like 5.5, 6 million people. Yeah. So B2C, just for us, we don't invest in B2C for Latam because it doesn't make sense.
No, not at all. And I think in Silicon Valley, maybe VCs are very focusing B2C startups. And here, the magic is happening in B2B.
So going back to when you first started your first business, what advice would you give to yourself knowing everything that you've learned in your process?
I will sell the company. I will sell the patent. I have it there. And no, I didn't know anything about businesses. My father has a small grocery store, and maybe that's the reason why I love cash flows and I knew how to do things, but it was not because I studied something related with that. So I will say myself, don't go to a traditional job and just move forward. But I think you have a time for everything, right? And I don't know if you put me in that moment with the ecosystem, I think I did it well without knowing what was going on. I think everything has the right moment, and that was not the right moment. I didn't know about it. But with the right ecosystem, yeah, sure, of course I will.
And what about what you've learned? If you could go back to when you first started as the director at Startup Chile, what would be the advice that you'd give to yourself when you just started knowing what you know now?
In Startup Chile?
Yep.
Wow, that's a hard one. I will check the portfolio again. And I didn't realize about the B2C and B2B portfolio when I was realized because we didn't have the data. And now we have the data and you know more about the context, and large corporations are trying to get inside startups in a positive way. So yeah, we realized that maybe 6 months or after I arrived. So yeah, with those hints, I will start earlier. The investor club that we have, the corporate network that we have. And just in generation 17, we did the change of focus, attracting startups that are going to add value to our economy. Maybe I will start that before. But again, everything is about process, right? And trying to figure out how to do things. So it was evolving. It's fine.
So what's the next goal for Startup Chile and for you?
We are just opening a new co-working space. We're very happy with that. It's huge. And we just opened it like August 1st. Yeah. So it has less than 1 week or so.
Only a week.
Well, only a week. And I think we're moving very fast in creating some kind of organization that is working in a very collaborative way with the private organizations. A lot of people love that. A lot of people hate that, as always, when you do different things. But we're trying to connect and we're trying to improve our service to our startups. At the beginning of Startup Chile was everything about community. And now we're trying to do our best to provide you guys the best service that we can provide in terms of mentors, curriculum, connections and everything. So it's about evolution. It's about the maturity of the program is different too.
What do you see as the next big milestone for either the Chilean ecosystem or Startup Chile in general?
We're looking for I think with the volume that we have, everybody's asking about what's your winner? What's the role model that everybody wants to follow? I think you have some inside the ecosystem that are almost there, that is just one step forward and they are going to appear everywhere. So I'm waiting for that. Everybody's waiting for that because I think with that, you're going to create the VCs. Everybody's going to change because now you're going to have a reference, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the next milestone for the ecosystem. The other issue that we have is how to improve the relation with the regions and how to create the ecosystem in regions too, because every region is different and how are you going to promote that? And I think we have to improve in terms of how large corporations invest in innovation and technology and how do they work with startups.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're trying to help make that happen of the first company to really break through from Chile. There's been some good ones that have alumni that have left and are in other countries, but I think you're right. It sort of needs the ICQ moment for Chile to make it happen. And I think it's coming. So
yeah.
Thanks.
And we will be here to watch this change, right?
Yeah. So keep bringing in good companies that we can invest in.
Okay.
Thanks for doing this podcast. It was great to catch up and be able to talk through some of your history and the history of Startup Chile and where we're going. So thanks again.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of Crossing Borders with Nathan Lustig, my guest Rocio Fonseca. Hope you enjoyed our conversation. And if you did, please go to iTunes and give me a rating. It really helps other people discover the conversations that we're having here on Crossing Borders. And don't forget to subscribe on Stitcher or iTunes or find the older episodes at nathanlustig.com. Thanks again.